Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all cool, pretty people all throughout the world, welcome to hell. Where we're talking about Terran vs. Terran, Mech Style by Ryung. I left you with a little bit of a drool prompt at the end of part 1 about some of the things to think about in regards to how early this factory is, to this drop going on over here, to why on earth we would be getting so many hellions all of a sudden. And this is where I want to talk about the whole notion of timing. Very often, people will neglect when things happen and simply say what things will happen. So an example is 3 factories is normally what we see out of a meching player. And normally we see 2 have tech labs and 2 have tech labs and 1 have a reactor. And the reason we generally see that is because the player opened up with some general aggressive opening and now he needs to get the tanks up because tanks are the big core to mech. So when we see 2 factories getting reactors, we go, wait, what is he doing, like a hellion heavy composition? No, actually, not really. Ryung is eventually going to be still building a ton of tanks and not as many hellions, but Ryung began tank production so early he's already going to have a lot of siege tanks. So in a sense, if we say that by 12 minutes we want to have a lot of tanks and some hellions, we're already on the way to a lot of tanks, but my god, we haven't even started hellion production. So we got to catch back up with the reactor. I mean, if we opened up and we built 3 factories with no add-ons, and we tried to harass really aggressively with a lot of just regular old hellions, and finally it ended, we might get 3 tech labs so we can catch up as quickly as possible in the tank count. Though there's no good build that I know of where you go 3 factory with no add-on, still, with these sort of weird thoughts, you can start to see how you're peeling back to this goal composition. And the big goal that Ryung wants to do on this map is that he's up against another player who's thus far not really done much of anything, who's been pretty passive. Ryung is looking to shut down a 3rd base. What are the 3rd bases? Well, there's one potential here, and this gets owned pretty easily by, like, putting tanks there. And this is actually a really easy expansion to own because, watch this. Here's Ryung's entrance. He walks down here to this watchtower, which is pretty easy to do. It's on his half of the map. And then he goes from the watchtower right to the back of the base. More importantly, he can actually put tanks here and shoot down the super critical gas geysers. This is just not a good expansion to take fast in Terran vs. Terran, unless you have like way more tanks. Ryung is looking to shut down this expansion. He wants to get here early, shut this down early. He's going to try to do a push nice and juicy and fast with these hellions. Yeah. Now, all those Marines that were the general purpose defense, let's take a look at Ryung using these. This is good for a couple of reasons. For one, it could just do damage. And that's always a good reason to consider something. Notice how simple that was. I love to overcomplicate stuff. And by love to overcomplicate things, I actually don't love to overcomplicate things. I don't know why I said that. Is it opposite day? I don't know. Things are weird in hell. Things that can do damage should at least be considered. It's good to do damage in this game. Second reason we like it a lot. It's making use of the Marines that were initially used for defense now to offense. Almost everything we build for defense should have some way that we can later use it for offense. And third, it contributes to that plan we have. We can harass him here and force him to stay back in defensive, and then we can more easily move our little army all the way down to get into this juicy position that's outside the 3rd. We're going to see here from good friend Ryung, who's doing some great work killing off banshees, being all boss and stuff. is that MMA actually moved out into the middle of the map and all that sort of stuff. We're going to see that Ryung's attack actually doesn't really go amazingly. But this is still good. Why? Because, well, Ryung knows that there's a big open potentiality down here. Pretend for a moment that this factory finished at the same time as this factory. Just pretend that. Give me that credit. If this finished at the same time, Ryung would have been able to get a lot more Hellions out earlier and been able to begin this push. But right now, what we're really seeing out of Ryung is that he's just waiting for the good old Infernal Pre-Igniter. And we're starting to see all these pieces come together. That Raven that we got really early now has enough energy for 2 Seeker missiles. That medevac we got for a little bit of extra value is now sweeping the map for us. We're getting all the vision control. Step 1 was to make our opponent pulled back, and then step 2 was to get this tower and to get this tower. And step 3 is going to be this big attack of tank Hellion down at this low ground. So of course these gas geysers we didn't really need until 10 minutes. Ryung did not really need that gas that early because of his fancy attack. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Alt F, which will change Ryung and Acer's MMA, or these players' colors to green and red. So that way it's a little easier to see on the mini-map. Alright, cool. So we start to see these little pushes coming out from MMA. Ooh. Medevac's still moving in. Oh, to that juicy third. What? Well, this medevac is doing some serious work for just giving us a sense of if there's a third to attack. Because I've said so many times, Ryung's goal is to shut down the third with this great Hellion swell. But we just don't know if that'll happen. And if he's not doing it, then great, we just defend. But suddenly, a Waven. Wasted a little bit of the Waven energy. Almost manages to pick it off, that's just some sweet swanky micro. And finally, the tank numbers that we got to build up rather early is at 4. Even though we went for double reactor Hellion, notice that relatively speaking, these two numbers are pretty close. 4 tanks, 6 Hellions. And off he goes. This is just an amazingly well-timed attack. On this map, it needs to have a clear place to go. It needs to have a clear place to go. You can't just have an attack because attacking's cool. Has this clear location to go to try to, again, deal damage to this third base. But also, dude, you know what the best time to attack is? When you expand. Aw, yeah. Ryung killed off the rocks! Killed off the rocks! And there's a number of funky moves that we're seeing now. First of all, this is expected. 2 more factories with what? Both tech labs. He wants to get up all the tanks. Already has all the Hellion production he'll ever need. Now he can catch back up in Tenku production. But look at this double Viking production. The worst place to be as Ryung is to have a big tank Hellion army and have your enemy with a cloaked Banshee killing it all off. And you can't kill it because you don't have Vikings. Air control is very, very, very important as mech. And P.S. we know that MMA has cloaked Banshees because he showed us them. So look at this nice juicy attack. Oh, excuse me. Let me show you the pre-nice juicy attack. Here's the real juice. This is the juice. Look at that mini-map. Look at that sexy mini-map. See, he's moving down. Oh, I mean, there's some attacks, so he's getting in position. But look how he sort of swept down and over. Look at these control on the right side, the vision all along here. Would like to see a little more vision here, but man, that was real spicy and fancy. Remember our friendly, full energy Raven? Well, look at those Seeker missiles. Those Hellions that we were building up early, they're going to be able to reinforce very, very quickly. And the tanks that we started to build up early, we have 5, our opponent, excuse me, we have 6, our opponent has 6. we are either going to be equal to or ahead of our opponent in tank count, even though we've only had one factory. So then, okay, watch this. Watch this. Watch. Oh. Now, if you thought Seeker Missile wasn't amazing, well, then you're lying to me. You know it's amazing. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, let's pull that back. Let's see those hellions in action. These hellions that are able to easily roast everything thanks to the blue flame. These hellions that are absorbing oh so much critical damage. After the Seeker Missile shot, a couple blasts from the hellions and Hellion Seeker Missile can clean up most tank lines. We even see that Ryung gets the benefit of a remaining auto turret. So Ryung looks to have a slightly stilted attack. It looks to be a little bit shut down, but Hellion reinforcements are fast. So even though these tanks are coming out kind of slowly, great. Ryung just gets into this juicy position. He just needs to kill off that foremost tank and get into a good spot. Air control is really important because without these Vikings for air control, we just can't see. In production, you'll notice it's not non-stop Viking production, but we still have a reactored starport, just in case we need to begin building Vikings to regain air control. And what do you know? We're shooting the orbital command already. So see, that Viking got spotted. Would not be surprised to see some Vikings in production appear. The one issue that I spoke of earlier still exists. When we're up against a bio player, the biggest concern we have is counterattacks, where a big sweep would come up here. This tower is super, super needed. Right now, it's kind of okay that we don't have it, because we're pretty sure most of his army's here, because we just got into a big fight. But I do love that Ryung's rally points are at his base rather than right here. Now I want to note something about just like general human psychology as a justification for this. If you rally by your base, every time you want to send those reinforcements to your front line, there's a little moment in there where your brain has to go, do I want to reinforce right now or do I want to defend? Even if you're playing really quickly and you're just like, all right, quick, I got to get these guys to the front line, there's still that little moment in there where you get to do some consideration, which is very, very useful. If I'm a super fast army like Ling Muta, I might rally to the front lines because I have well the faster army. But if I'm Mech, I definitely am going to be getting split up often. Which is really the second segment of what we're going to be looking at here. I'm going to speed it up a pinch. Oh yeah, look at this. Ryung, who has accomplished his goal. He's destroyed a third. Now what? Now we see Ryung doing more slow, non-aggressive units. Hellbats. To speed them up, we may eventually get some medevacs up, although we might not. Hellbats are still good just by virtue of having 135 life. This group is now orphaned. This group is in Atari. Mineral field depleted. And at this point in time, Ryung needs to reposition himself in a place that can control his expansions. So this looks like one little move out, just sending forward to join. But there's some secret things going on. A sensor tower here, a barracks here, and we're soon going to see a huge spatial sweep. Missile turret, and soon enough a sensor tower over here. I mean, it's nice that Ryung has a pretty good sense of where the army is, just from what he can see. But the sensor tower, I'm almost... I almost don't care about this right now. I mean, there's a huge battle going on. But I want to note that if we take a look at the minimap, it's kind of hard to see the dotted line there, but as he's moving forward, he made it so that he had total coverage here. He has some more air defenses here. He has this watchtower here. This army moving down is irrelevant to the success of the game if this is not covered and if this is not covered. The simple act of scouting the flanks with Mech is the difference between consistently winning and then feeling like it's a coin flip. If you have no vision, here's the coin flip situation. Well, his army's either in front of his base, and then I'll kill it, or his army went around mine, and he's killing all my stuff. So we see MMA doing a sort of expected bust-in, hurling everything he has at these orphaned tanks, and that is to be expected. Our orphaned groups will eventually get taken down.
Mineral field depleted.
And there's nothing wrong with that. We almost want to force those exchanges because, as we can see, MMA has to spend more of his resources to successfully kill this off. Now here, in an instant, we are seeing the exact precise issue that is caused, that MMA has forced. MMA went straight north, threatening this expansion. Actually, let me pull back to here. A little more. A little more. Crap. Sorry, it's farther back than I thought. Well, look, let me pull back to before the attack happened. Alright. This is great. Look at this little hellion guy here. Here's this army that we sent down, and I was like, ooh, look at this hellion. He's so great. We love Mr. Hellion. Oh, yeah. And then for some reason, this hellion gets picked up and joins in the battle. This is a dangerous moment. This is just bad. I don't mean like Ryung is bad. I mean this feels bad. Because right now, Ryung has no idea what MMA's army is doing. It's probably going north, but it can dart south at any moment. And Ryung's not quite sure, so in this spot, Ryung was in a bind. Ryung said, well, crap, I don't know if he's committing up here, but I have to unsiege and go now to force him to pull back. And MMA said, oh, well, if you're going to unsiege and try to attack my front, I'm going to hit you right as you are sieging and likely take out your entire line. So this is the moment that feels coin flippy. Oh crap, I have to go, says Ryung. I have to go because I don't know if this army is going to my main, and that would be disastrous. And now we see MMA regains the lead. So it's very subtle, but if you have just a little bit of extra vision, you know when you can safely siege and unsiege your main army. And it's very simple. If they're far away from your unsieged army, then you can unsiege. If they are close by, you're gonna have to wait. So that Hellbat drop was a real godsend. I mean, that's a generally nice move if you have your opponent in a bind, is just to do a tiny, tiny Hellbat drop. Not a big one, just a tiny, tiny one. That works great, and that's what sort of caused Ryung to stabilize here. So now we're going to get to see the exact same thing again, this exact same consideration with Mech. These tanks need to be sieged in time, and they have plenty of luxury waltzing here. What if this SCV for Ryung were not here? These tanks would have no idea when to siege. Look how far away they siege. For Mech to work really well, these tanks want to be blasting off the instant something is within range 13. Down here, what do you know? Ryung has taken yet another key watch point. Yeah, look, here's a sensor tower on this side. Again, we can see two concentric rings. There's one, here's one ring, and over here's the second ring. And at the intersection of these two is uncomfortable chafing. That was a joke. The important thing that you know is that there's just two sensor towers. So great, scans galore, scans more and more. I wish I had a vision, I implore. Great, so now that MMA's pulling back, again, Ryung has another opportunity to do a safe walk forward. There's watchtowers on this map, but what about other maps? Well, this is why we would have lots of scans available. We're probably not spending a lot of our our juice, our energy on mules anymore. It's almost exclusively scans to get into good positions. MMA is doing a gosh darn good job of slowly sweeping the map every which way around. We talked about how dangerous it is to take this expansion if you don't have control of the tank count, and we can see that it definitely goes in favor of Ryung. He's losing tanks and still has the lead. But yet again, we get to see the big dangers of being up against Bio, which is just having him pierce through a weak spot, and when that happens, we have to just fold in. Siege here to prevent the onslaught. This is killed. Darting in aggressively is how you lose. Just accepting this as a loss is how you prevent painful losses. So, okay, there's another expansion there. Let's once again see how Ryung moves in relation to everything. Often what will happen is we will see a Bio player pull way far to the extreme sides of the map. Like, I mean, if you look from the MMA cam, I mean, he has nothing over here. Everything is here, and actually a good chunk of it's over on this backside. So let's come back to the Ryung cam. When this is going on, medevacs to do little tiny counter drops are wonderful. These tanks are kind of pinned here because they're trying to deal with this onslaught, trying to deal with all this stuff, but thanks to the fact that this is at the corner, medevacs have a nice opportunity to do some damage. Oh, also, what are these tanks doing in the main base? Why are they not rallied over? All the units move to the right, which is a reason for Ryung to go, oh shit, I better have some tanks in my main base. Finally, everything indicates there's a leftward movement, and Ryung has to siege up here blindly, carefully, blindly, to begin a very slow press forward. Notice how much earlier Ryung does the sieging when he doesn't have vision. Now, this command center in the main was done for a while. Ryung just sort of comfortably waited, and this is actually a dream position for Ryung to be in. To know exactly where the entirety of the force is, to have already established good sieging. Most of the tanks are sieged, a few stragglers are there, gently filling in the most vulnerable sides. I mean, it's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but that's just because it's MMA and he's a boss. But this is just great. Ryung knows that there's an army here. Actually, let me remove this. He knows of the blue MMA army. So, we talked about these little pods getting isolated. And here is a voluntary self-isolation. I'm leaving these here because of scan and I see those things there. And I'm going to unsiege a small chunk of the army to begin to reclaim other territory. Isn't this SCV huge? Just the hugest thing. The biggest battle in this game is for vision. You should always be looking for every possible vision center. It's just so good. This is this is another pretty key little marine. Isn't that nifty? That medevac early on drops up on the high ground. I mean, there's no way to even get to this thing without an air unit flying by. So, you know, it kind of spots medevacs, it gains. It allows there to be just like a little bit more assuredness that nothing is sneaking by this way. So good. Alright. I wonder how long it's been on the mini-map, but that's fine. I don't think it's really that important to have seen the main screen for a little while. Now look. I'm going to go to a break. When I come back, it's going to be part 3. You know, it's kind of funny, now that I think of it. Given that that was on the minimap a little bit longer than I wanted to, I still think it was probably better to be looking at the minimap.